Alrighty, here we go. Hello everyone, and thank you for listening to this presentation on the Medicare ABN form. There's no audio taping or videotaping allowed, and any unauthorized reproduction, dispensing, forwarding, or copying of this target coding presentation is illegal. The information contained in this presentation is for educational purposes. It's not intended to be legal advice. Target coding does not engage in providing legal services. CPT is a registered trademark of the AMA. The modifiers are also a registered trademark of the AMA. Every attempt has been made certain to make sure that the information in this presentation is 100% accurate. However, it is not guaranteed. A little bit about myself before we get started. My name is Dr. Marty Kotler. I am a chiropractor. I'm also certified in CPT coding. I'm a certified professional compliance officer. That's what those initials are after my name. I have to take courses and continue education classes, and actually a lot of work that goes involved with continuing these certifications, and it also gives me an opportunity to schmooze and network with other experts in the field like healthcare attorneys and other people that help providers across the country with billing and coding and fraud and abuse issues. I've written many books on billing and coding for chiropractic and physical therapists on documentation, billing, and coding. I've done I've probably presented over the last 10 years to about 3,500 chiropractors and their staff members in seminars that I do across the country. I'm a featured speaker for the Coding Institute, Parker Seminars, Foot Levelers, plus I'm a guest speaker at many state association conventions nationwide. I'm going to be a guest speaker at many events coming up this year, so check your state association calendar, see if I'm up on the coming at a nearby convention. So you may want to come see me live in person. Also, if you're part of your state association that's looking for a guest speaker on billing, coding, and documentation, let us know. We work with a lot of state associations. Oftentimes we can get a sponsor, so let us know if you'd like us and for us to come and do a presentation at your state association convention. Okay, the ABN form, the formal definition or the formal the title of the form is the Advanced Beneficiary Notice of Non-Coverage. ABN stands for Advanced Beneficiary Notice, and the ABN form is a mandatory form. It's a required form that a provider must issue to a patient before providing a non-payable yet normally covered Medicare service. This form, this ABN form, will inform a Medicare patient that a normally covered service like what? Spinal, chiropractic, manipulative treatment. Now I put CMT in there because that's what the AMA calls what we do. The American Medical Association has their information in their CPT code books, and they own the copyrights to the CPT codes. In there it talks about chiropractic, and they call it CMT. So that's what I'm going to use here. Now, I know many of you call it adjustments, some of you call it manipulations, and I know there are some chiropractors that are sensitive to the fact that they feel that an adjustment is different than a manipulation. Let's just put all of that on the side right now. We're going to go with what the AMA says, CMT, chiropractic manipulative treatment. So again, that second bullet on the screen, the ABN will inform a Medicare patient that a normally covered service like spinal chiropractic adjustments for active treatment is now not going to be covered due to a specific reason. What's the main reason? Chiropractic wellness care or maintenance care. That's the most common reason for issuing an ABN, is spinal manipulation for maintenance care. Now, the intent of the form is to notify a patient that Medicare will probably not pay for a certain item or service in a specific situation based on medical necessity, even if Medicare might pay for the service or item under different circumstances. This allows the patient to make an informed consumer decision about whether or not to receive the item or service for which he or she may have to pay out of pocket. So that's an important point. That's the most important point, actually. The purpose of an ABN form is to let a patient know that a normally covered service is now not going to be covered. So you ask the patient, do you want it, Mr. Jones or Mrs. Jones? We are now going to provide a service that Medicare typically covers, but now they're not going to cover. Do you want to receive the service? If they say no, that's the end of the encounter, and let the patient know you're happy to help them in the future. If they have a flare-up, an exacerbation, they can come in and Medicare will probably pay again. If they say yes, that's when you have to get the ABN form. Now, the only Medicare covered service, as a reminder, you should know this, the only Medicare covered service when performed by a chiropractor is spinal manipulation, and that consists of 3 codes, 98940, which is a 1 to 2 region adjustment, 98941, 3 to 4 regions, and 98942, which is all 5 spinal regions being adjusted. So chiropractors must issue ABNs when spinal manipulation is expected not to be covered. What about extremity adjustments? What about exams? We're going to get to that. You should not give an ABN to a Medicare patient unless you have some genuine doubt that Medicare will not pay. You must have a good reason. You're prohibited from obtaining Medicare patient signatures in advance on blank ABNs and then completing them later. You can't pre-fill them out. You can't pre-check any of the options. You have to verbally review the ABN with the patient, go over it with them. The doctor doesn't have to do it. Staff can do it. Once the patient fills it out, if they agree to receive the non-covered service, then give a copy to the patient. You keep the original. Doctor keeps the original. If you do not issue an ABN, a valid ABN to a patient when required, you cannot accept payment from the patient. If you took payment from the patient and you did not issue the ABN properly, you'll have to give the money back. You may use an ABN as a voluntary notice to alert Medicare patients about their financial liability for services that Medicare does not cover. Example, chiropractic exams. Let me repeat that. You can use an ABN as voluntarily for chiropractic exams and x-rays and therapies that Medicare does not cover. So what does that mean? You're not required to use an ABN for non-covered services. An ABN is not required to bill a Medicare patient for a service that is not a Medicare benefit. ABNs should be kept on file for 5 years. You may issue a single ABN to cover an extended course of treatment. An ABN is good for up to 1 year. I happen to recommend to my clients that they have an ABN signed on every visit. The ABN must be signed in order for you to be able to collect for the covered services, the spinal manipulation. You cannot issue ABNs on a routine basis. You can't say, well, I never know what Medicare is going to do. Stating that, Medicare could deny anything at any time is not a reasonable basis. When you bill with the AT modifier, we're going to get into the modifiers a little bit later. When you use that AT modifier, which stands for active treatment, you're telling Medicare a lot of information. Those 2 little letters, A and T, that tells Medicare that you have read the Medicare guidelines, that you've done a chiropractic examination and determined that the patient has a painful neuromusculoskeletal condition that's caused by a subluxation, and that's causing the patient to have an inability to do their normal daily activities, and the care is medically necessary. Wow, yes, that's what the AT modifier means. Providers must get familiar with the Medicare guidelines. Use the AT modifier. Patient comes in, they have pain, discomfort, stiffness, tightness, difficult doing their normal daily activities. They have subluxations that's causing all of this. Bill, use the AT modifier. You'll get paid. You should expect to get paid. If you don't get paid, then you should probably appeal it. Now, you may or may not need to use ABNs with Medicare Advantage plans. Those are the patients that opt out of traditional Medicare Part B. I still recommend you follow the Medicare guidelines with Medicare Advantage plans until you check with the plan that you're billing. Now, one of the most important things to know about Medicare and the proper use of the ABN form is the difference between active treatment and maintenance care. So Medicare says they cover active treatment. According to Medicare, active treatment, that's for spinal manipulation, it's a payable service. And there's different types of care. There's acute care. According to Medicare, a patient's condition is considered acute when the patient is being treated for a new injury identified by x-ray or exam, and your treatment is going to result in a significant improvement in their condition. Medicare also covers chronic care. Careful with this. A patient's condition is considered chronic when it is not expected to completely resolve, but where the continued therapy can result in some functional improvement. Once the patient has remained stable and further chiropractic spinal manipulation is not going to be showing functional improvement, then that's considered maintenance care, and that's not covered. Maintenance care is one of the main reasons why Medicare feels that chiropractors are being paid improperly. There have been multiple OIG reports over the years that says chiropractors are not documenting properly. Medicare feels that, OIG feels that the payments were made improperly, most of the time because the documentation looks like it's maintenance care or wellness care, but the chiropractor billed it as active treatment, which is medically necessary care. So Medicare has a definition of maintenance care. According to Medicare, maintenance therapy includes services that seek to prevent disease, promote health, and prolong and enhance the quality of life, prevent deterioration of a chronic condition. Again, chiropractic maintenance care is not payable. Medicare modifiers, these are specific to Medicare AT, which I mentioned already. Modifier AT is used for active chiropractic treatment. AT modifier is meant to represent to Medicare that the care was medically necessary. You would never use AT with maintenance care. Modifier GA, GA notifies Medicare that you have a signed ABN form on file. Modifier GA should only be used for covered services, again, spinal manipulation. If you have some genuine doubt that Medicare will not pay, example, wellness care, then you need to offer the patient. At this point, it becomes mandatory for a covered service that's now not going to be covered. It's mandatory to use the ABN form. If the patient agrees and says, yes, I'd like to receive maintenance care, go get the ABN form. If the patient checks yes to option 1 on the ABN form, then you need to bill Medicare using the spinal CMT codes with the GA modifier. I don't recommend the use of the S8990. That's a HIPAA code for maintenance care. I don't recommend you use that. It doesn't work. What do I mean by doesn't work? I've had a few of my clients try it because I've heard other consultants mention to use that S8990 wellness code. So I thought, great, that's a great code to use. However, it doesn't work, or at least it hasn't worked with my experiments, because what happens is it comes back with a CO remark, contractual obligation. Patient may not be billed. So I recommend you stay away from billing the S8990. Next modifier is GY. It's used for all non-payable services. So pretty general statement here. Use the GY on all the non-payable services like exams, x-rays, therapies. Do not use GY on maintenance spinal care. And the last modifier here is modifier GZ. Hopefully you'll never have to use this. This designates that an ABN should have been used, but it wasn't. This is a modifier that's a measure of good faith towards Medicare that you recognize you made an error and you cannot collect from the patient. So let's take a look at the form now. Here's what the form looks like. You can Google this and just, search for the Medicare ABN form, and it's free. You can get it online. This is what it looks like. Make sure you have the right form. There's a few older ones out there, but make sure you're using the one that says in the bottom left corner, CMSR 131-311. It's a one-page form. Now, those of you that really want to dig in and learn more about the form, you can go to Medicare Claims Processing Manual. There's a whole bunch of instructions. I think it's about 39 pages of instructions on how to use this one-page form. I've read it many times. It's Section 50 of the Medicare Claims Processing Manual. So this is what the form looks like. There are 10 customizable areas, areas labeled A through F you can complete prior to giving to the patient. Area G must be completed by the patient. That's the option box. Area I is where the patient must sign the form, and Area J is where the patient must date it. So this is what the form looks like blank. Very nice. Let me show you what the form looks like filled out. Let's start off with brand new Medicare patient walks into the office. You're going to do an exam. You must do an exam even though Medicare doesn't pay for it. You must do an exam. So let's say you're an office that would like to use the ABN form for your non-covered services. Here's what it looks like. Put your name, address, and phone number across the top. The patient's name, identification number. Don't use the patient's social security number. Don't use their ID number. Use your own internal number, or you could actually leave that blank. And then start filling out the form. Everything you see in green you would need to be fill out on your form. So it says right at the top, if Medicare doesn't pay for, fill in the blank, the chiropractic non-covered services listed below, you may have to pay. Then list them. The chiropractic non-payable services are what? Exams, x-rays, extremity adjustments, modalities. So you could use this form on the very first visit if you want. I don't recommend it. I'll show you what I recommend in a minute. Now, is this ABN form mandatory for non-covered services? No. Now, let's go back to the form. Reason Medicare may not pay. Need to fill that in. What does it say here? These are non-payable services and items by Medicare, not payable by Medicare when delivered or ordered by a doctor of chiropractic. Next, you need to write down the exact amount, or you could put a range, but try and get as specific as possible on what you're going to be charging the patient. Let's say you charge $100 for an exam, put $100 on this form. And that's it. Leave the rest of the form blank. Option 1 says, I want the chiropractic non-covered services listed below. You may ask to be paid now. So that answers that question oftentimes. We get that question when we do this topic. Some doctors say, well, I heard that, we don't charge Medicare patients for exams because Medicare doesn't pay for them. That's a myth. That's false. You should be charging your full normal fee. So just a little myth on that. You should be charging for these services. Another question, well, if we charge for these, for the chiropractic exam, do we have to abide by the Medicare fee schedule? I've heard that. Yes, Dr. Kotler, don't we have to abide by the Medicare fee schedule for exams and the non-spinal manipulation? The answer is no. You could charge your normal full fee. Option 2, I want the chiropractic non-covered services, but do not bill Medicare. Okay, patient is saying, okay, here's my money, Dr. Smith, for the exams and the x-rays, and, don't bill Medicare, it's okay. I would rather not bill, but here's the thing. If the patient has a good secondary insurance and they check option 2, now you have a problem because they're telling you not to bill Medicare. If you don't bill Medicare, then it can't go over to the secondary. So that's, another reason why I don't like this form. There are multiple reasons why I don't recommend you use this form. I'm going to show you a little bit later what I recommend you do for the chiropractic Medicare patients coming in for non-covered services. Now, all the stuff you see on the side of the screen here to the side of the form, this is information right from the Medicare Claims Processing Manual where it says you don't have to use an ABN for non-covered services. So if you're looking for that, because I hear that all the time from staff members, we have to use the ABN form. We were told we have to use the ABN form for non-covered services. I disagree with that. There's the information on the side here if you'd like to look it up and read more about it. So that's the first visit. We got to get that out of the way. First visit, Mrs. Jones, and here's another thing that we train our target coding members. We tell our staff members to tell the patient, Mr. Jones, you're about to go into the room to get a chiropractic exam by Dr. Smith. Unfortunately, Medicare, fortunately or unfortunately, Medicare doesn't cover chiropractic exams, Mr. Smith. The fee is $100. Don't use $100. I'm just using that for educational purposes. Mr. Smith, the exam is $100. Medicare doesn't cover it. Just want to let you know that in advance. before you go in and see the doctor. Here's a form that you understand that Medicare doesn't cover the exams. Get that out of the way. Now you're treating the patient. For active treatment, you're getting paid. You see the patient 4, 5, 6 times, 8 times, 12 times, 14 times. Let's say on the 15th visit, you break the news to the patient. This is the good news, bad news visit. I'll bring up the form now. The good news, bad news visit. Mr. Jones, the good news is you've reached maintenance care. We've been talking about that the last couple of visits because you told me you're feeling a lot better. You told me you're back at the gym. You're riding your bike. Your pain scales are way down. You have less spasm and tightness and stiffness. That's what you've been telling me, Mr. Jones, over the last couple of visits. So at this point, I feel that you have reached maximum therapeutic benefit according to the Medicare guidelines. You've reached wellness care. That's the good news. The bad news is Medicare doesn't cover wellness or maintenance care. Would you like to continue to come in? Now, this is the 14th visit. It could be the 8th visit in your practice on some patients. It could be the 28th visit on other patients. So there's no specific visit where you are required to use this form. But when you choose the visit, then it becomes required, and here's the form. You see it on your screen? Your name, address, phone number across the top, patient's name. Now we fill in the blanks. If Medicare does not pay for chiropractic maintenance care, you may have to pay. Medicare doesn't pay for chiropractic manipulation of the spine for maintenance care. So once you do spinal manipulation, you have to use this form. If it's now not going to be payable, do not mix spinal manipulation services with the non-covered services on the other form that I showed you. Patient has to check an option. I want the chiropractic maintenance care. You may ask to be paid now, but I also want Medicare billed. Then you'll bill Medicare, take off the AT, replace it with GA. It'll come back denied with a PR remark code, patient responsible. That's nice. What's even better is if the patient says, yes, Dr. Kotler, I want the maintenance care. I value chiropractic. I want to come in once a month for a little tune-up, a little oil change. I understand Medicare doesn't cover that. That's okay. I still want to come in. I'll pay you cash, no problem. And now the patient checks option 2, which says, I want the chiropractic maintenance care, but do not bill Medicare. I like that. Every chiropractor that I know wants more cash patients. I don't typically hear chiropractors saying, I want more patients that come in with really terrible insurance that I have to do a lot of paperwork and get paid very little. I don't hear that too often. What I do hear is, I want more cash, I want more cash, I want cash, cash, cash. Well, here's your opportunity. Medicare patient, get them to wellness. They check option 2. They come in. It's a cash patient, and you don't even have to bill. Now, sometimes patients don't get it. Sometimes staff members and doctors that I explain this to don't get it. So my recommendation is get the information right from the source. Here's a booklet. You can get this online. This is a nice booklet that Medicare puts out. It's on the internet. You can get it. It's free. It's all about the ABN form, and it gives specific instructions on when to use it and when not to use it. On this page 3, it says when you issue an ABN as a voluntary notice, the patient does not even have to check an option box. So that's why, again, I don't like using the ABN form for non-covered services, but you must use it for spinal manipulation. When it's not going to be covered, it becomes mandatory. Now, I'm still coming up as the form that I recommend that you use for the non-covered services. That's coming up. But here, this talks about the voluntary use of ABNs. If you issue ABNs on an electronic screen, many of my clients, they want to go green. They go, Marty, I don't want paper. I'm getting rid of all the paper at my office. I'm throwing out all the pens and pencils. No more paper, no more pens, no more pencils. Okay, so here we go. If you use an electronic screen, you must ask the patient if he or she prefers a paper version. Regardless of whether the ABN is signed electronically or on paper, you must give a paper copy to the patient. Those of you that want to go paperless, sorry, still got to use paper in that case. Here we go. Medicare numbers must not appear on the ABN. You see, Medicare numbers, Social Security numbers specifically, do not put that on the ABN. There's a whole bunch of other things in here that you may want to look at. That could answer some of your questions. It talks about each option box. In general, you should keep ABNs for 5 years. A single ABN is valid for up to 1 year. Now, if you want to prevent problems, chiropractic is all about prevention, right? At least most chiropractors like to treat patients for crisis care and then put them on a wellness program. Yes, I know I have some clients that they're only into pain. They treat pain. Actually, the name of their clinics is, the Chiropractic Pain Center. They treat the patient just whenever they're in pain and tell them not to come in if they're not in pain. But that's rare. Most chiropractors are into prevention. So my feeling is you should be interested in preventing billing and coding and documentation problems. You should be interested in preventing audits. So how do you prevent problems? You need to be proactive. Medicare and your state board of chiropractic expects you to know all the rules. The days where you could say, I just didn't know, and you get excused are over. You are expected to know. You are required to know. And you never want to be accused of willful neglect. That's a reckless indifference, intentional failure. Basically, you can't, you knew or should have known, but you didn't do anything about it. That's what willful neglect is. You don't want to be accused of that. So, again, how do you prevent problems? Establish a protocol for active treatment. Make sure the patients sign that HIPAA notice, that notice of privacy practices, and outline certain things in there that you do in your practice. Like if you have an open therapy room, talk about that in your HIPAA notice. Document subluxations very clearly. Show in your notes that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. One of the biggest problems with Medicare is that chiropractors seem to be treating patients forever, and they don't seem to discharge patient, and it looks like wellness care. Update the care plan as the patient improves. And there are increased audits going on with Medicare, unfortunately, now. Those of you could relate to that in certain states right now are getting hit with these audit letters. And some of it is due to these OIG reports. This is a recent OIG report that came out that talks about how chiropractors were paid millions of dollars inappropriately. And some of you are getting, comparative billing reports. Take a look at these. Analyze them. Make sure that you're not looking as though you're an outlier. Make sure you can prove everything that you do. That's what it comes down to. There are audits, but if you're following my recommendations, if you're documenting properly according to the Medicare guidelines, everybody around you can get audited. You shouldn't worry because you're not doing anything wrong. It's like if you're driving on the highway and the speed limit is 70 and you're going 70 and everybody else is going 80, you have nothing to worry about. Now, you could still get pulled over for some reason, but if you were going the speed limit, you have your license and registration, you can get pulled over, but then you'll be let go, no problem. Yes, it could be annoying, but no fines, no penalties. So you could do your documentation perfectly, you could still get pulled over, but you'll be able to sleep at night because you're doing things right. So that's one way to prevent problems. Read your local Medicare guidelines. Read the policies from all the health plans you bill. Review them with your staff and log them into a policy and procedure manual. That shows proof. Like if somebody comes snooping around saying, can you provide me with proof that you're making efforts to prevent fraud and abuse? What would you say? You might say, well, we go to seminars and webinars. Anything in writing? Do you have staff trainings, Dr. Kotler? Yes. Can we see your staff training log? So document all these things. Just like you document a patient's visit, encounter properly, document that. Document your trainings. Attend seminars. Attend webinars. Watch videos. Read books on billing, coding, and documentation. Review your documentation with a certified coder that specializes in chiropractic. And one of the biggest things nowadays that I've been recommending to my clients more than ever before is a chiropractic OIG Compliance Manual. If Medicare comes knocking on your door, if any agency, state board, malpractice situation comes up, if you have a playbook and you could explain to people and show people, look, this is how we do things, and you have ongoing logs that you could prove that you have trainings, that could prevent problems, that could prevent audits, that can prevent payment recoupment. So get a chiropractic OIG compliance manual. We offer it, but if you don't want to use our company, go find somebody else that can put one together for you specifically for your practice. It's really pretty straightforward. Our compliance manual, OIG compliance manual, takes 2 to 3 phone calls, and we customize it for you. So go ahead and get it. It'll help you sleep better at night. So what is compliance? It's based on the OIG compliance program guidelines that were put out many years ago, and it consists of 7 essentials. You must have written policies and procedures. To me, that's not optional anymore. You have to conduct regular staff trainings. Most chiropractors do that. I have some clients, they meet with their staff before every shift. They have team huddles. Document that. Create open lines of communication. If a staff member has a problem with anything, you should have this culture of compliance in your office where they can share any billing or coding errors with you that they've come across. You have to have a compliance officer. You must do internal audits. This isn't optional. Medicare requires it. Your state board probably requires it too, that you do internal monitoring and auditing of your charts. Not a lot of them, maybe 2 or 3 every quarter or every 6 months. You need to respond promptly to detected offenses. You have to enforce proper disciplinary practices. Here's an internal, I've created a chart audit tool. So my clients send me a chart, and then I will go down this little checklist, yes, no, and then I give them a score of 82 or a B. So get a good little chart audit tool. Do them on your own. Create policies here. You might have a policy on laser. Here, we utilize laser therapy. The device we use is FDA approved. Most health plans do not consider laser therapy a payable service. Therefore, we provide an affordable self-pay rate. How about open rooms? See, what I do is I create policies and procedures, mission statements, core values, specifically for your practice. Again, it doesn't take long to put together a compliance manual. It could be one of the best things you ever have. Open therapy. We utilize open adjusting therapy room. We make a good faith attempt to keep our conversations at a low level. We offer every patient the opportunity to be treated in a private room if requested. Have good forms. This is an acknowledgement form that the patient, your staff, every single person in your practice that's an employee, including the business owner, the doctor, should sign this form basically saying, I understand that I will follow the compliance plan. I have reviewed the compliance plan. I've had the opportunity to ask questions about the compliance plan. I will implement the compliance plan. You sign it. Now you have protection. Doctors, listening to this, you want to protect your business, right? Doctors, if you have a family, you probably have life insurance. Why? You don't need it if it ever happens. It's to protect your family. Doctors that own a home, you probably have homeowners insurance. Why? Just in case. Doctors, you should have a compliance manual. Why? Just in case somebody comes knocking on your door, you could prove that you're doing the right thing. Now, if you have a staff member that signs this compliance manual that they agree to the compliance procedures, one of the compliance procedures might be that staff members are not allowed to go into your EHR program and take information out without authorization. So you have them sign a form that they understand they can't do that. Now they do it. This staff person has become a criminal in essence, has gone into your system and is doing illegal activity, and then they get caught. Now an investigation occurs. You'll be let off the hook, so to speak, because you did the proper training. The patients, your staff members signed the form that they went through training. You'll probably be let off the hook versus no forms, no policies, no trainings, nothing in writing that you've done training, and now you have a staff member stealing from you, which leads to a breach or other issues where a patient wants to come in and file a complaint. No policies, no procedures. You're going to be held liable and possibly have disciplinary action. Now, this is what I wanted to show you for your patients that come in. Medicare patients we're talking about. Medicare patients with traditional Part B. You may want to use this on other patients too, but we're talking about Medicare patients with traditional Part B that come in on the very first visit. This is the form I recommend. I don't recommend the ABN form. It's too confusing. It gives the patients options. For example, let's say the patient has a good secondary that's going to pay for the exam, and they check option 2 on the ABN form. Now you can't bill Medicare to get the bill to the secondary. I don't have an option on my form. If the patient says, please submit to my secondary for the exam, great, of course you'll do it. But I don't need to have an option here. So I recommend this form on the very first visit. It's a one-time form. Get it out of the way. Very simple. Put it on your letterhead. Patient name. Dear Medicare patient, Medicare doesn't pay for all services and items provided in this office, even though we have a good reason to think you need them. Medicare only pays for spinal manipulation when performed by a chiropractor. The below services are non-payable by Medicare when performed by a chiropractor, and list everything you do. Exams, x-rays. Do not put spinal manipulation on this list because that's covered. And even if it becomes non-covered, you don't use this form. By law, you have to use the ABN. Extremity adjustments, modalities, orthotics, decompression, laser, computerized range of motion, surface EMG, needle EMG, dynamic EMG, vitamins, lumbar braces, whatever you do that's non-spinal manipulation, put on the form. And then is a very straightforward, strong acknowledgement. I acknowledge I've been told in advance that these services are not payable. I agree to pay for these services. I've had ample time to ask questions. I'm signing this notice voluntarily. I understand I have the right to refuse care. I am fully responsible. This is what you should be using. However, if you still want to use an ABN on the first visit for non-covered services, go right ahead. Just a few closing comments, and then we're going to open it up to questions and answers. Please check with all the carriers you bill prior to submitting claims based on this information. We cannot guarantee that this information will guarantee payment from any carrier or patient. Target coding is not responsible for any rules or laws that may change following this presentation, and you know they change all the time. Stay on top of the changes by attending seminars, webinars. Join your national and state professional associations. Now, I mentioned earlier we do offer a OIG Compliance Manual. It's a comprehensive, customizable OIG Compliance Manual create for your practice. We create policies and procedures, the basics plus certain ones specific to your practice. We give you the chart audit tools, corrective action plan guidance if that's needed, sample training logs, incident report forms, 2 or 3 phone calls, 2 or 3 trainings, and you're all set. We also offer HIPAA, which we haven't talked about at all really today. So HIPAA is also a program that we offer. This is much more comprehensive because more needs to be done. HIPAA is about protecting patient health information, securing your EHR and all your systems, your electronic systems. That's really the main purpose of HIPAA, is to protect patient health information, especially when being transmitted electronically. It's about putting in proper passwords, training staff on antivirus software and firewalls, and having policies and procedures just in case there's a disaster, a flood, a fire. Do you have backups in place? All of that. That's HIPAA. We offer a wonderful, I think it's one of the best ones out there, where you get very nice training videos. You can have your staff go through a little test on HIPAA, 20 questions, and they can print out a certificate. We have a cloud-based storage portal for all your HIPAA policies and procedures. Plus, our program includes $100,000 of cyber liability insurance. I don't know any other programs in the chiropractic profession that include that. Ours is more expensive. Why? Because we offer a lot more. I'm not ashamed to say this. We're the Mercedes. The others, well, there are other good ones out there, but most are Hondas. Nothing against Hondas. We're the Mercedes. Nothing against Hondas, but we sell Mercedes. It's a concierge type service. It's a premier type of service. Oh, this is an excellent book I recommend every chiropractor have. It's the guidebook on the best chiropractic ICD-10 and CPT codes to improve reimbursement. It has these great clinical, there's the section here on clinical findings. For example, if you diagnose a patient with cervicobrachial syndrome, what ortho, neuro, and chiro tests should you do? We have a nice, there's a nice little chapter on that, plus you get some cheat sheets in the book and frequently asked questions like, what's the difference between idiopathic scoliosis and thoracogenic scoliosis? What's the difference between radiculitis, radiculopathy, and myelopathy? What's the difference between spasm and contracture? What's the difference between myalgia, myositis, and myofasciitis? And the section on that. And then we also show you how to pair your procedure code. So we do seminars and webinars all over the country. We offer memberships, basic membership, $99 a month. Pay as you go. We also offer a gold membership, platinum membership. If you're interested in just getting a free coding and compliance checkup with us, we don't charge. 10, 15 minutes, have a chat with me or one of my coding experts, and we'll let you know what we think. Here's our contact info. Email is info@targetcoding.com. Website, targetcoding.com. Telephone number, 1-800-270-7044. Fax, 844-831-2347. That's a HIPAA secure fax number. Our clients that send us items, we recommend that number be used if faxing. Just want to thank everybody for attending. I hope you learned a lot.